Hello and welcome back to another Create Mod tutorial. Today we are going over a bone meal / moss farm. Behind me you can see two of the same farm, one's just a little bit longer than the other, that both produce moss. The one straight behind me here produces about 5,000 moss or 1,000 bone meal per hour, and the one further back here produces about 10,000 moss and 2,000 bone meal per hour. They have the exact same structure where a gantry shaft grabs the stone, as you can see, pulls it back from the stone generator, it gets converted into moss, and then mined with the drills. This farm requires 0 stress units and can just run off of the water wheel that is included in the schematic. And as you can see, it has some item loss around the edges, but there isn't really a way to fix this other than using a ton of hoppers, which overall probably isn't as good for lag purposes as just letting the items float here and then despawn. Once the items are mined by the drills, they come into the hoppers onto this belt over here and then go up and get sorted out. The cobblestone gets thrown away and all of the compostable blocks gets placed here onto this belt that then go into these composters down below. The bone meal then gets cycled into this item vault that either, if possible, goes up, as you can see here, onto this item belt here that refills this item dispenser, and when that's full, it just stays in the item vault. You will take all of the bone meal out of here for further processing for bone blocks or anything else that you need. The larger farm here is just a double setup of the smaller one. As you can see, there's only one moss block on the small one, where there are 2 on the larger one. It is almost double as fast as the first small one, while still having pretty much identical complexity, since the complexity is only on each edge here, and the middle is just stone gathering. For the schematic users, there are some things to consider. I have 4 separate small farms here, and I am going to go through how to deal with the schematic. If instead you want to do the block by block tutorial, I'll put a timestamp on the screen now so that you can skip to that. Moving on with the schematic, if you place it in the world, you're going to get something similar to this. You probably won't have lava here, but otherwise it'll be pretty much identical. You can see that, at least for me and likely for you, that these item vaults are a little bit wacky. If you break and replace them, they should turn into a 2x2 vault, and do the same on this one here. If this lava is not filled in, I would do that now. You only need lava on these blocks here, so not including the edge case ones here, and you only need 5 in the middle like this. The water needs to be placed in these stairs all along the edge here, and I'm going to do that from the back just so that the lava doesn't pour out. You should then see all the water in all of these stair blocks here. If this is not the case for you, make sure you place these in, because if you start the farm with not all the water in, it will break. We then need to head over here to this cauldron and place a lava bucket in here. This will delete all the cobblestone. If you're using the schematic down in the description and you're building your machine with the moss block facing north coming from the lava here, so if the moss block is north compared to the lava, the correct rotation should be applied automatically, and the same thing if you're facing west. If you're facing south or east, you'll probably need to switch this rotation speed controller to clockwise. The final thing that needs to be done is to actually power this thing, but before you do that, I would recommend with a wrench right-clicking this belt here that is connected to this belt and the rotation speed controller, because depending on your orientation, which is why I have 4 of these, you might need to reverse this rotation speed controller. So now we can put in the water to test which way this thing is turning. So place the water first in this stone stair here, and then again in this top one, and this will prevent water from flowing out this way. If you want and are scared of water flowing, you can always place blocks here, and this won't increase the footprint of the farm since this is also included. Now, to test if you are going the right direction, you just need the rotation speed controller to be facing these belts up this way. So you should be able to travel up and go towards the right if you're facing from this way. If that is the case, you can connect this up and nothing should happen. I'm going to do this again with the setup going the incorrect way. So just for fun, I'm going to switch this to the opposite direction. So you'll see on these 2 machines, since they're facing different directions, they will have a different rotation versus for counterclockwise and clockwise rotations. So we're just simulating that here. If you connect it going the wrong way, you will get a break like this. If this happens, first switch this back to the right rotation and now you kind of need to fix everything that just broke. This includes replacing linear chassis, placing them back on these hoppers so that they are facing towards the front of the build, getting super glue, placing them on all of the linear chassis here, and then grabbing your wrench and right-clicking on the 8 that is default, holding shift, and moving it down to 5 blocks. If you don't do this, the farm will break, so make sure you do this. Then we can replace in the gantry carriage here, and that should kind of start the farm, but since it's broken, it won't actually do anything. What we also need to do is place another redstone contact on this side of the gantry carriage here, and connect this with glue to the gantry carriage itself. And you also need to remove all excess glue items here, which could be causing an issue. Once that is done, we can actually quickly flick this powered toggle latch here, and it will fix itself. Now, as you can see, this is what happens when you don't place in the water. Since I'm working on a new one, lava will start flowing everywhere, and it gets really annoying. If this happens to you, just break all the lava sources, wait for the lava to disappear, and refill the water. Now, we're not done with fixing the system from the previous break, since some of the drills have not been replaced. So just break the blocks that are necessary and replace these drills, making sure that there is no excess glue or weird glue things here. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comments, or you can go to my Discord where you'll be able to post photos and I can help you more one-on-one. Once you replace all the water, you'll see that it starts flowing off into the drill area. So you're going to need to replace all the stone that you placed before. 1, so that the lava can spread properly, and 2, so that you can actually place the lava. When that's done, you're just going to place it in the center here, just like that. Once that fully spreads to every corner, then you can turn on the farm. The farm just turns on by flicking this lever here. And once that's done, you should see this. Obviously, in order to turn it on, you need to fill this in with at least a stack of bone meal. Another thing I forgot to mention is that sometimes this piston head will be stuck. If you just break that block, it will fix itself and start actually bone mealing this moss block. So if you're only getting stone and cobblestone when you do this, that's probably your issue. So that should be all of the schematic things out of the way. We can now get working on the block by block tutorial. I'm just going to be building the small one. If you want to build the medium, I will have a schematic down in the description for it. And same with the small one, we'll have a schematic for this one as well. If you want to build a larger one, it is really, really easy. All you have to do is move this slice just over, and you can continue this pattern in the middle of just drills, the linear chassis, and stone generator over as much as you'd like. To build this, you're going to need a 15 deep by 11 across by 6 blocks tall space, and all of the ingredients you need will be in the description down below. We're going to start with the cobblestone generator portion. So from the back left corner, you're going to go in 2 blocks and then in 1 more diagonally. So you should have a temporary block here, and then a glass block, or really any other building block, since this is just going to be the bottom of the cobblestone generator. From there, you can remove that temporary dirt block that we placed, and then place 4 more blocks, 5 in total, going this way. Then we're going to build 6 more blocks over, or 7 in total, so that we are now 2 blocks away from the edge in this direction. We're then going to just fill in the rest of the build here, so you should have a 5 by 7 square area of glass, or really any other building block. Directly above that, we're going to place in stone. We're doing this manually just because the stone generation for the first time is a little bit complicated to do automatically, and it's just 35 blocks and it's not that big of a deal. Then we're going to place glass blocks around the stone on either edge here, just like this. And then on the back edge, we're going to place temporary building blocks against the glass with stone stairs here, so that each corner has a stone corner stair, so that when you place water in it, the water should not go anywhere. Then you can remove those temporary blocks and place in water in all of these stone brick stairs, and then place glass above them. You can then fill in the glass above each side here as well. We're then going to come over to the front of the stone generator, and we're going to place a shaft directly underneath this white stained glass block, and the same thing on the other side, a gearbox on the further back side of that shaft with a shaft going into it, and then 6 blocks later, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, place another shaft here, and a shaft there connected. You're going to connect these two with a belt, this one with a belt to here, this one with a belt over to here, and that should be good. You should have a little L thing with a continuation little bit right here. Then we're going to come over to the left side here and extend this belt out by 2 blocks so that it goes right up to the edge. We're going to grab a vertical gearbox, a shaft, and another vertical gearbox like this with a gear shift going into it just like that. We can then place in our gantry shaft. This is going to be the thing that pulls these stone blocks over to get switched into moss blocks. And we're going to want this to be 7 blocks long in total. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're then going to come to the other side of the belt here and place a gearbox down. We're going to then place shafts going all the way along here that go up into this belt, but not connecting to it. We're then going to grab some hoppers and place them on top of these shafts just like this. And these shafts will obviously eventually turn into a belt. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go all the way to the end of this gear shaft and place a shaft like this, connect it with a belt. And then for each subsequent one, we're going to go out just by 1 block here. And then we can build this all the way along like that so that it is in line here. I accidentally placed these shafts. Let's delete those. And then we can connect all of these with a belt. Now you should have something that looks like this. We're going to get the last little bit of belt on this level in. So you're going to go diagonally up by 1 block, connect these with a belt. And then you're just going to right click it twice with a belt so that it goes up 3 blocks in total. 1, 2, 3. We're then going to get a little bit of circuitry in. We're going to come over to the left side here where this gear shift and gantry shaft are, and we're going to place a block on top of the gear shift like this, 2 blocks behind this gearbox like that. We're going to place a powered toggle latch on top of the vertical gearbox going into the block where the gear shift is, with a redstone dust here, a block on top of the powered toggle latch with a repeater on 4 ticks going into this block. We're then going to place a smooth stone slab with a redstone wire on top of it. We're using the slab so that it doesn't accidentally power this gantry shaft. We're then going to place a block diagonally upward with a redstone dust on top of it. And then we're going to place a redstone contact that is facing towards the gantry shaft, just like this, with a redstone dust on top of it that should connect to the redstone dust on top of this block. We're then going to place a glass block with a redstone repeater on top of it, again set to 4 ticks, and then another redstone contact, this time, if I can figure it out, facing downwards just like this. I forgot to mention we do have to break this hopper down below here, and then we can, I suppose, place a redstone contact here that will eventually be connected to all the drills. We're going to need to place 1 more piece of redstone dust on top of this redstone contact that should be connected to the redstone repeater and head over this way. We're then going to fill in the rest of this line with glass, just like that. And if you wanted to, you could put it in the lava now, but given that you're going to be placing and breaking blocks that might be important, I wouldn't do that until the very end in case they accidentally get burned in the lava. We're now going to be placing in even more hoppers. So on the edge with the gantry shaft here, we're going to place hoppers all along the way here until you get to the very end here, where we're then going to turn right and place all the hoppers along this way. This is because this gantry shaft, as it's moving and pushing blocks all along, it'll push them this way and sometimes push them back this way, making these hoppers really important for picking up a bunch of excess items that would otherwise be lost. We can now place in the drills. So you're just going to place them all the way along like this so that they're facing upward. And we're going to make a square here that goes up until this belt that goes upward like that and is pretty much perfectly surrounded by hoppers otherwise. So you should have something that looks like this. It should be a 5 by 7 area. Coincidentally, the same area as the stone, which means this stone is going to get pulled over and broken by these drills. We're going to need to glue all of these drills together like this. And then we're going to want to glue this redstone contact with this drill here so that when these drills go upward, this redstone contact also comes upward to get in contact with this one. We're then going to come over to the side here and place a barrel connected to these drills with a brass funnel and a redstone contact facing upward. We're going to glue all of these again together like this, and then we can place in the gantry shaft. You're just going to place 2 blocks here with the gantry carriage connecting to it. Future Skylar here. When you place the gantry shaft going upward, it inverses the farm and breaks it. So once you place these gantry shafts, place a vertical gearbox above it facing towards the front or back of the farm, just not horizontally. And once you've done that, delete the 2 gantry shafts place them back in from the top down, and then place in the gantry carriage. This should now connect to these mechanical drills, which are connected to these 3 blocks and this redstone contact here. The logic here isn't too complicated. We're going to place a vertical gearbox on top of the gantry shaft with a gear shift, another vertical gearbox, and a normal gearbox here that should connect this belt to this line of things here. We're then going to go underneath this gearbox here, place a block with a redstone torch on it that should be powering this vertical gearbox and this gear shift. We're then going to place a lever on top of this vertical gearbox. This is going to be our on and off switch. We can then place a redstone wire here. I would recommend turning this on because if we're building this and you connect it to power either accidentally or on purpose, before we're done, it could break a lot of things. Then we're going to place a pulse extender here, set this to 20 ticks, and then we're going to place a normal building block with a redstone contact next to it, and make sure you rotate this so that it's facing downwards so that when this gantry shaft goes up, this redstone contact connects to this one. We're then going to place 2 pieces of redstone dust here that should go straight into this pulse extender. And then I would just recommend placing a block here to maybe prevent some items to go onto this gantry carriage. I don't know if it actually does anything, but I think it looks a little bit better as well. We're then going to come to the edge of this gantry shaft here and place another gantry carriage, this time with 7 linear chassis going across it. It should end up perfectly in line with these mechanical drills here, and then we're going to need to connect all of this with super glue. Once it is all connected, hold out your wrench and you should hover over and see an 8 here. If you right click on it and hold, you should get this GUI, and if you shift, you should get all of them connected to each other like this, and all of the numbers on every single linear chassis should be changing. Make sure you set this to 5. If you set it to more than 5, it will break. If you set it to less than 5, it will also break. So make sure you set it to exactly 5 for each of them. On top of this gantry carriage connected to the linear chassis, we're going to place a redstone contact here, another one directly next to it, and these should both be powered now. Directly next to this redstone contact, we're going to place a sticky piston facing upward with an observer on top of it facing towards the center of the build here. We're then going to place a block directly next to the observer, a temporary block, and then a normal piston going out like that. We can then break that temporary block and place a dispenser directly below this piston here. And then we can place hoppers going into this dispenser underneath this smooth stone block here and out one more like that so that it makes an L shape. We can then place a redstone dust on top of this hopper, and that should just be in the normal state like that and not in the just dot state. So it should have little legs pointing in all 4 directions. This will make sure that when this observer powers, it powers this redstone dust and the piston and dispenser. We're then going to place in our moss block, just place it directly in front of the dispenser, and now's a good time to fill this in with a stack of bone meal. You can do more. I definitely recommend doing more if you have it, but if you don't, a stack will work. Probably even half a stack will work. It will just take probably a little bit longer to get it up and running at full speed. Now we're going to place in some more belts, so place a shaft directly next to this observer, another shaft next to it like that, and the same thing out again for both here. We're then going to go diagonally downward from this shaft here, so that if we connect it with a belt, it will be connected and diagonal. And then we can place a shaft coming off from the redstone dust and connect these 2 just like that. We're then going to need to place in one more hopper here so that it is underneath this belt, and then be sure to place a permanent block here so that items come and go and stop on this part of the belt here instead of flying off into oblivion. Then on the opposite side, right next to this redstone dust, we're going to place a gearbox, vertical gearbox, a shaft directly below it, and then another vertical gearbox here with a shaft. We're then going to place in a couple of slabs and redstone dust pieces. You're going to place slabs all the way along here. Oh, this should be top slabs next to the hoppers, just like this. And then we're going to place 2 pieces of redstone dust, a redstone repeater going into this gearbox, a redstone dust below it that should be powered as of right now. And then we're going to continue this along all the way to here. And then we're going to place our final redstone dust just like that, which should depower this redstone torch. If this lever is powered on, like I did earlier in the episode, this should still be powered, but if it's not, it will just be unpowered. I recommend powering it because once we connect it to power, you don't want this thing moving a bunch just yet. Now that that's connected, we're going to get in an item vault right here. right next to this gantry carriage, it's going to be a 2x2 item vault that is just in this position here. You're going to grab some andesite funnels and make sure they are coming out of the item vault and into this item belt here. This is going to be our refilling thing for the bone meal to refill this dispenser. We can then place in our hoppers that are going to be grabbing the bone meal from the composter, and putting them into the item vault. We can then place composters above each of these hoppers, just like this. And you're going to want to go up until the very edge where this diagonal belt is. So just placing in one more set here, and it should be perfectly in line with this redstone wire as well. We can then place hoppers above this all the way down like so. And then be sure to place in a shaft at the end, right next to this redstone contact and redstone dust, and right next to this andesite funnel. We can then place in a final shaft here that's connecting to this gearbox and connect all 3 of these shafts with a belt. We're then going to come over to this side of the build and work on the cobblestone deletion system, I suppose. So we're going to place in an item vault that is directly next to this diagonal belt in the corner here that we made. And we're going to place in a brass funnel going into the item vault and set the filter here to cobblestone. We're then going to place another brass funnel coming out of the item vault with a cauldron below it filled with lava. This will basically just take all the cobblestone, put it in this item vault, and delete it immediately. Now, kind of the last few things that we need to do are get power into this thing. As you know, this thing doesn't actually use any power, but we still need a source of rotational power to get it started. So we're going to place in a stair here that is facing towards this white stained glass bit here. Directly next to it, on top of this redstone contact, we're going to try our best to place in a water wheel that's not that direction. There we go. It should be facing like this so that it will spin this way towards this stone stair. We're going to place another stone stair right on top of the water wheel. We're going to place a rotation speed controller and a large cogwheel that will power this dispenser and piston and whatever, but otherwise we'll be okay. Now comes the time of setting the rotation speed controller. This depends on which direction the farm is built in. If you're building this farm to the south or to the east, you're going to need to set the rotation speed controller to 256 clockwise, so the top one. If you're building it to the north or the west, you're going to need to set it to 256 counterclockwise. If you don't do that, check in earlier in the video where I made that mistake on purpose to show you what would happen. I'll put the timestamp on the screen now so that you can go to it if that happened to you. So now that this is set to 256 RPM in the correct direction, either clockwise or counterclockwise, depending on which direction you're facing, we can now put in the water to start up this water wheel. Before we do that, I would recommend, just for safety, to remove this belt for the time being, just in case you accidentally put in this rotation speed the wrong way, because it is really annoying to fix. Before we put in any water, I would just recommend placing in a glass block or really any other building block next to this rotation speed controller to prevent water from flowing out onto the redstone down below. Now that we've done that, we can place in our water. First, we're going to place water in this bottom stone stair here, and then another one on this top one. That should power all of the belts right here, since we did remove this one here, and they should be going this way. If they're not going that way, switch the rotation to the inverse of whatever you've done. Additionally, you can place blocks here if you'd like, if you're scared of water falling everywhere, but I think it just looks cool having it open, so that's why I've done that. Before you start the farm, make sure you fill in the lava. This includes the 5 middle blocks, as you can see, and not the 2 edge blocks. We can now replace this belt here, and you should see a bunch of stuff happen. Unfortunately, it broke, which is a great example as to why this thing is kind of annoying. So this is a really interesting bug, because on the one that I built with the schematic, this does not happen. My guess is that it's the way we placed in these gantry shafts. If you place it from the top downwards instead of the bottom up, that will invert the polarity and actually make it work, which is such a silly way for that to actually happen. We just need to replace the gantry carriage. I just flicked this powered toggle latch so that that is actually possible. And our linear chassis, place them down all the way along the line like this, and glue all of them. Make sure again you set them to a distance of 5 by holding and right clicking with a wrench, and then while you're in this GUI, holding shift and dragging it down to 5 so that all of them are at 5. Then you can right click this power toggle latch to get the thing working. And I totally forgot to re-glue this redstone contact. So I'm just going to add it in here, quickly break this redstone dust so that it doesn't power everything while I glue it back together. And before we do this, super make sure that the lava is placed in. I almost forgot about that. So we're just going to need lava in the middle 5 places here. This should spread all the way along like this. And once they're in all 5 corners, you can replace this redstone dust and it should fix itself. There we go. That is working now. And since this is powered, the gantry carriage will not move at all. So if you're building this, make sure you place the gantry carriages from the top down, which is really interesting. I did not know that would change the rotation of the entire thing. So to actually test this, we can turn the lever off, and this should start breaking everything. I forgot to replace this, but this should start working. And there we go. You should see that cobblestone is being put into the item vault and deleted pretty much immediately, while all of the moss and other compostable items are being placed in these composters and eventually going into this item funnel. Until your dispenser fills up, everything is going to go straight up here into your dispenser for reuse. But once this fills up, along with the subsequent hoppers, and this whole belt fills up, you should start getting items from this item vault. If you want a quick and easy item taking out solution without permanently breaking the rest of it, I would recommend placing a threshold switch down right next to the item vault, setting it to, I don't know, maybe 20% and 10% or something. It doesn't super matter. Just make sure that there's at least 5% left when you move this thing back up. You obviously want to invert the signal so that this top thing is red instead of the bottom. And then we're going to place a brass funnel here, which should be powered and not dropping out any items. Then you can place down a chest or wherever you're bringing your items. And once this gets full enough, it will start dropping out items. Now that this is full, we can start trying to put in some bone meal into this item vault here. And eventually this will go up to 20% and start dropping out bone meal for us. And as you can see, the item vault is already filled up and it is starting to drop out items into this hopper and going into the chest. Once, let's say, the items go below the 5%, it will head back up to the top, stop dropping items, and make sure that this continues to refill without an issue. As you can see, sometimes this bone meal will just float here, and that is intentional. We obviously don't want this to be taking items every single second of every day, so this just provides like a 5-minute timer, because items despawn after 5 minutes. And once it despawns, it will start refilling and refilling the hoppers up here. And I've never seen this go past like a stack and a half, so you've no need to worry about how long this takes to despawn. And that is it, the bone meal farm that produces honestly just a ton of moss and bone meal per hour. If you like this tutorial in this video, be sure to leave a like, and if you like what you see, consider subscribing. Check out a couple other Create Mod tutorials if you need it. I got an iron farm, I got everything else probably also. So thank you all so much for watching. If you liked it, be sure to like and consider subscribing. I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.